Well, Dylan, I'd be lying, my friend, if I said I wasn't nervous.
I think we both are.
Had to get some good music for tonight. I wanted a good, wrestling theme, maybe, something a little harder, a little edgier. How's it going, everybody? How you doing, Dylan?
Doing all right.
All right, let's see if I can get this post here. Let's try this. Ready? Thanks for tuning in to the Afterlife Network. This is the Landon and Dillan Show, episode 15, the Zodiac Killer. Open line 706-237-8230.
That was pretty good.
That's pretty good, right?
He hit the post.
Oh my gosh. How you doing, Dylan?
I'm doing pretty good. How are you?
I'm great, dude. Somebody said my mic was low. I'm gonna turn that up. Just let me know if that fixes it for you. I got me turned up.
I think it was probably just during the music, I'm sure.
It could have been. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, let me know how we sound out there, guys. Make sure everything comes through good. You know how it goes, especially with technology around us. We can't never get anything right.
We're really glad to welcome everybody for our second true crime podcast. We don't intend on doing true crime all the time, but last episode did so well for us that we thought we would try to recreate it again. So this week we talk about the Zodiac. We're not diving into any suspects this week. We're going off of evidence, the facts of the case. And if you're faint of heart, this one might not be the one for you.
Yeah, some of it's pretty brutal. I do want to mention that we do have the chat. You guys can jump in the chat there, say hey, say what's up. Let us know where you're listening from. There's a bunch of people. There's always new people, and I have no idea where everybody's from. So drop it down in the chat so I know where you're at. Let's see who we got. We got Ray Peace. We got Sherilyn Carter, Justin Brown jumping in. Justin, this is the Shure MV7. Yes, it is. It is. Good call. So yeah, dude, I've been really pumped about this episode. For one, this is the first time on our show that we've actually created an event ahead of time and told people that we were going to go live at a specific time, right?
Yeah, so much in fact that we are no longer allowed to promote ourselves.
Yeah, what's up with that, dude? So Facebook blocked me apparently today or at some point last night from sharing anything. So I'm not even allowed to share this stream out. So if you guys would hit that share button, I'd really appreciate it. I didn't even know if it was going to let me go live, to be honest with you, Dylan. I figured maybe because I had everything set up prior to me getting banned or whatever happened to me, that it might go through. But it looks like everybody's coming in. We got Ken Allen, Tallahassee, Florida. What's up, Tallahassee? Fred jumping in. Great. So, yeah, we're going to get right into this because I'm going to be completely upfront and honest with you guys. There is a lot of material to go over here. We are going to really try to specifically just dive into the murders and not necessarily the suspects, at least on this episode. Depending on how this goes, we may do a part 2 where we go into the suspects and all that back history with that. But this is more or less about the evidence that we have and the murders that we know of.
And with that, I guess we throw it over to me. So, wasting no more time, everybody, once again, we thank you for joining. To set the scene of the first murder, we're in Solano County, California, Friday, December 20th, 1968. David Faraday, 17 years old, and Betty Lou Jensen, 16 years old, are shot and killed at a lover's lane on Lake Herman Road. This is within the Benicia County, within the Benicia city limits. The shots were fired by a .22 caliber. David seems to have put up a struggle. Betty seems to have ran. Neither would survive the night. Investigators were able to narrow down that the killing had to have taken place within a 6-minute time frame. There is no motive. This was a random killing. Nobody could be nailed down, and the killer was seemingly a phantom. So with the first killing, um, this is a super small town. This is a town where not a lot of folks, are on these back roads at all times. There was a small pull off that was a lover's lane. A lot of the teenagers in the community knew about it. Uh, these two kids had obviously pulled off, and you know, nobody really knows what happened next, other than the fact these two kids were attacked and killed. Um, so David Faraday, he was found outside of the passenger side of the vehicle. He was a passenger, and Betty's body was found several yards away. The assumption is that she had tried to run, and once again, unfortunately, neither of these suspects would survive the night. This takes us into the next murder, which is in Vallejo, California. This is Friday, July 4th, 1969. Um, the victims were Michael McGow, 19, and Darlene Farron, 22 rather, sorry. Um, they are shot in Blue Rock Springs Park. Michael survived the attack. However, Darlene was dead on arrival to the Kreischer Hospital. Michael said that this man had trailed them from a restaurant, and when they pulled into the park, they didn't know if he was still on their trail. Michael asked Darlene who the guy was, and she simply replied with, "It's someone who's jealous." Um, Michael goes on to say that the gun that was used was quiet. He says the man was about 6 feet tall, had curly hair, jet black hair, that is. He said that the guy was very plain and was wearing glasses. So this is the first ID of the suspect that we will have. This is the first of many that we will have in the future. Landon, so far, how are you feeling about this? We're two murders deep. We know that there are four sets of victims not connected to each other at all. How are you feeling about this?
Well, it's interesting, and especially talking about this case, is there's always like a starting point for people who are serial killers or just want to murder people or whatnot. So I'm curious if these are even really the first ones, and if they are, then typically this is the point where you're going to see the most fuck ups by the person doing it. So
Yeah.
this is hopefully where we're going to be able to find the most evidence if I'm just looking at it from the outside.
So that's a really interesting point that you bring up. How do we even know these were the first killings of
Right.
the Zodiac killer? And to be completely honest with you, we don't. There are a lot of theories online. There are a lot of theories within the police departments that there were similar killings happening as early as, I believe, 1965. However, the Solano County killing was one that was written about in letters, presumably from the Zodiac. If the letters didn't come from a Zodiac, they came from someone who really followed the case closely, because they gave details in some of these letters, which we'll get into a little bit later, um, of information that wasn't released to the press, of information that wasn't released to the public. Um, and with later letters, actual physical evidence was also sent along. The Zodiac seemed to really enjoy taunting and tormenting, not only his victims but also the police and the press, as we'll get into a little bit later. Do you have any questions so far, Landon? Everything pretty clear?
Everything's good with me so far.
So continuing on with the Vallejo County incident, a person used a payphone at a closed gas station and claimed he was the killer. The station wasn't far from the Blue Rock Springs Park. Um, he spoke in a monotone and seemed void of emotions. This all comes directly from the operator who took the call. Um, he went on to describe the scene and the 9mm Luger that was used. He then said, "I also killed those kids last year." The operator says he ended the call after hanging on to the word goodbye. The operator was, in her interview, all these years later, she was still very, very strucken by the way that he said goodbye. She said that it's not something that she could describe, but he really hung on to it and said it in a tormenting way. It was the only time throughout the call he didn't speak in that monotone.
I must have not heard about this one. Is this the first time that he actually called and said something with his voice? Because I feel like I
Yes.
haven't heard of that out of any
Yeah.
of them that I know of.
So this is the first time of what would be many that his voice is heard.
Word. I didn't even realize there was recordings of his voice.
More on that in a bit.
Okay, we got Rusty Wade jumping in, Nancy Slover, whatever.
It would be a great time to point out also, guys, the phone lines are open. So if you have any questions or you're interested in talking about the case, 706 237 8230 is the call in number. You can also leave us a message, but we really like to have those phone calls and those discussions, and we'd appreciate it if you have something to bring to the table. The next incident occurred in Napa County, California. This is Saturday, September 27th, 1969. Brian Hartnell, 20, and Cecilia Shepard, 22. They are stabbed at Lake Berryessa. Hartel survived 6 to 8 stab wounds. These were all to his back. Shepard died on the 29th, a few days later, due to her injuries. She was also in a coma. This incident is different for many reasons. It's in daylight, not at night. A knife was used, not a gun. It wasn't a lover's lane. It was actually a fishing and picnic spot. Cecilia told Brian that she had noticed a man watching them. It seemed that the prowler was hiding behind a tree. She then noticed that he had a gun as well. Brian assumed that the man was just, relieving himself behind one of the trees, didn't think anything of it. But shortly thereafter, a a hooded figure would appear from behind the tree. He was pointing a gun at the couple, and he was also wearing an overlay. The center of the symbol was the circle with the crosshairs through it, which is a famous symbol. Landon, I think that was number 3.
3. Yeah, right there. That's the symbol. Okay, I got it up on the screen for people to see.
Fantastic. This is a symbol that would basically become famous through the Zodiac. This was kind of his calling card. He told Brian that this was a robbery, but to stay calm. He also told Brian he killed a guard getting out of prison. Brian and Cecilia cooperated. The man said that he needed money and a car. He wanted to make his way to Mexico. He then proceeded to have Cecilia tie up Brian, and then he tied up Cecilia. Brian kept asking him questions, and then the fella made the presumed Zodiac killer made Brian lay on his belly and hogtied both he and Cecilia. Go ahead.
I'm curious how they've tied, and we got a couple of chats I want to get to here too. But I'm curious how they tied this to the other ones, because it seems like with this one specifically, he's gone off the rails. He's went completely different. He's stabbing. He's doing it during the day. It seems to me by him saying that he needs a car and gas money that he didn't really have a plan, and that was kind of a factor that he should have already thought of and it already had an out for. But it seems like he was really relying on the moment to figure that out.
Well, here's the thing. He definitely had a plan because the hood and the overlay which he wore with that symbol on it, which there's another reference picture of the hooded figure. I think that might
4.
be.
Yeah, I got it.
Brian said that this wasn't something that was cheaply made. It was stitched together. Like the circle in the center wasn't like paint, as so many people think. It was definitely something that was made. We'll have more on why this killer is connected later, but they seem to be connected.
I do have a couple chats if we want
Please
to
go ahead.
do these real quick. this is maybe one we don't necessarily want to answer now, but this is something we do need to get back to. It's Justin Brown says, "I'm curious if there's any theories or leads that would indicate an accomplice or accomplices to the Zodiac killings."
So I'll take that now.
Okay.
Like I said, we aren't exactly talking about suspects in this particular episode. Having said that, though, there are a lot of theories about copycat killers and more than one person doing the killing, and it would seem as though it made sense. Listen, there were a lot of attacks happening in California at this time period to the point that there are some overlay between like the Zodiac killer and the Golden State killer and people not really knowing the difference between who was killing who. So my personal thought is that multiple people were doing the killings and that there were multiple people sending letters to press under the assumed name Zodiac. We'll have more on that in a bit, though. Landon, any other chats?
Yeah, one more. Why was he? This one's coming from Patricia. Why was he named the Zodiac?
He actually named himself the Zodiac Killer. I believe originally he was called something like the California Phantom or something.
Mm-hmm.
And when he started sending letters and calling these places, he would always start his letters or start his phone calls by saying, "This is the Zodiac speaking."
Okay.
It was something that he penned for himself. Is there anything else? You have any questions, Landon?
No, I was about to say, like, some of these things that you're saying, because I really don't know a whole lot about the case. This is kind of filling me in as I don't know anything either. But I was watching a show last night. I think what was it called? Hunt for the Zodiac Killer or something like that. And they were, in a couple of episodes, they were going into who he might have been as a child and stuff. And they were relating a lot of the stuff that, like how he named himself and things like that, back to comic books and things that he read when he was a child. And there's some more evidence, in some of these other murders that link back to comic books as well.
I wasn't going to get into suspects.
But again, it's TV, so who knows if that's legit.
I wasn't going to get into suspects, but I suppose because we're actually doing a lot better on time than I thought we would, we're getting through this relatively fast, which is good, because that'll give us a lot of after discussion. And by the way, before in the future, bear with me, please, but keep your comments rolling. We appreciate that. The suspect that Robert Graysmith believes did it. Robert Graysmith was a cartoonist who worked for the Chronicle, which we'll get into a bit later. He wrote an interview that came out, which was basically about Allen is. He fit no description of what anyone saw other than the fact he was an overweight man, which later what we'll see